morning to you all. How are you, my dear friends? I welcome you all in my YouTube channel, that is Biology at Fingertips by Saurabh Yadav. So in the last or previous section, we have discussed about the irrigation and the various modes of irrigations that can be applied in our agriculture sector, and we have discussed so many types. For example, sprinkler irrigation, as well as there will be the drip irrigation. These were the modern techniques which we have discussed, as well as we have also discussed about the water logging. Since when irrigation or water is sprayed in large quantity, then it may also lead to the damage of the crops. So we have discussed till now, and in the previous lecture I promised you that in the next lecture we are going to read about the various type of cropping patterns that can be applied in order to enhance the crop productivity. So there are various type of cropping patterns that can be employed in the agriculture sector in order to increase the productivity. Now suppose before reading that cropping pattern, we have to discuss about a basic topic, that is nutrient management. Nutrient management. What is this nutrient management? The nutrient management basically means one, nutrient management. How these nutrients can be managed so that each and every important nutrients can be supplied to the crops so that their productivity is maximum. Okay, so there are so many techniques that can be employed so that, suppose there is a crop, for example we are discussing about a wheat and paddy. These two crops really require large amount of nitrogen from the soil. They are taking large amount of nitrogen from the soil. And suppose we are cultivating either paddy, wheat for a long duration of time. Then what will happen? Ultimately, one thing is going to happen, that the nitrogen that is present in the soil is going to deplete after 1, 2, 3 or 10 or 15 years. Okay, this means that land is got depleted about nitrogen. So whenever the next crop is grown after 15 years or 16 years, then nitrogen is not there. Then how could you replenish that nitrogen? So ultimately there are various type of cropping patterns are employed in order to maximize the yield. So we are going to discuss each and every techniques that are employed here, so that suppose any crops must be cultivated that is taking either phosphorus, either nitrogen, either sulfur. This means it is taking every nutrients in some another amount. Suppose any crop which is taking nitrogen more, for example as I have discussed about wheat and paddy, then the next crop which is going to be cultivated must be a legume crop. Legume crop basically pea, gram and mustard. This means these are those crops which are supplying some nitrogen to the soil. For example, suppose this is a paddy field. This is a paddy field and this is soil. It is taking nitrogen from the soil. So there will be in the next is suppose this is the mustard. So this is the mustard plant, and this mustard plant usually supply or fix atmospheric nitrogen into the soil. So one is taking, this means it is taking nitrogen, and in another season this nitrogen is again back to the soil. So there will be a equilibrium between uptake and then given. So there will be no depletion of nutrients take place. So in this manner we are going to discuss what are the important cropping patterns that can be followed in whole India. Now let us continue the nutrient management. As we know that plant requires nutrients and these nutrients are supplied from the soil. Either it will be a micronutrient or either it will be a macronutrients. So plants require nutrients for their growth and development. They get the nutrients from the soil. This means the ultimate source of nutrients is soil. Suppose, as we are discussing the point, by the time a crop is harvested, it has taken away some nutrients present in the soil. This way, nutrients get used if land is cultivated continuously for the long time. And as this point I have discussed that whenever we are cultivating paddy continuously for a long duration of time, then there may be depletion of nitrogen. Nitrogen will be depleted from the soil. This means one nutrient, important nutrient is got depleted. So we have to discuss, we have to emphasize how we can replenish this or again restore these nutrients to the soil. This causes crop yield to start falling. This means ultimately when the nutrients are taken up from the soil, then that land will become a barren land. This means ultimately productivity will going to be down. Therefore, these nutrients need to be replenished. Replenished means restore. This must be restored into the soil so that it can be used one by one from time to time. This can be done either by natural methods. So there are natural cropping methods through which we can replenish these important nutrients to the soil. And after we can also add manures and fertilizers to the soil. And there are ultimately, as I have told you, the fertilizers are basically source of inorganic nutrients. For example, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So it can also be given so that the productivity may increase. So note down what is this nutrient management. Now let us continue with the natural methods. As we have discussed about the manure and fertilizers, so we have to discuss the natural methods, or simply you can also write the another heading that different cropping patterns used for maximizing crop yield. So there are basically 4 different types of cropping method that can be employed in order to increase the productivity. First, that is the field fallow. Second, that is the crop rotation. Third, that is the mixed cropping. And fourth, that is the intercropping. Note down, these are the natural method: field fallow, crop rotation, mixed cropping and intercropping. We are going to discuss in detail each and every types of cropping pattern. Let us continue. Now, now we are going to discuss the first natural method, that is field fallow. So, field fallow is a type of method in which we generally leaves the land for one or two cropping season so that it can regain its nutrients. Suppose whenever you are doing cultivation on a same land and it is continued for 20 or 25 years, then what is going to be happen? All the nutrients that are present in the soil will be taken up by the different crops, and ultimately there will be a depletion of what? Nutrients in the soil. So this is a method in which generally for one or two season there will be no crops will be cultivated over the land. In that period of time, the dead plants or dead microorganism or dead animals that are present into the field that are going to be decomposed by the decomposers, and ultimately what will be what is going to be then when this decomposition will take place, all the important inorganic nutrients and other important material can be replenished into the soil. So note down what I have discussed. One way of allowing land to naturally regain the nutrients is to leave. Leave means simply leave that land. There will be no crops will be cultivated on over the land. So is to leave it free, or it is called as fallow, for one or more season. Okay, then what is going to be there? Dead plants, animals and other organic matter that collect on the land are decomposed by microbes thus the nutrient are returned to the soil. So note it down, this is called as the field fallow, in which generally we are going to leave the land for one or two cropping season, and ultimately the dead plants or the other microorganisms, then it will be decomposed by the help of what? Decomposers, and ultimately these nutrients are returned back to the soil. Note it down, this is the field fallow. Now we are going to discuss about the second method, that is crop rotation. Crop rotation. So it is a type of basic method in which generally we are rotating the crops. Rotating simply means the method in which one crop comes after the another crop. This means suppose we are cultivating here wheat. Suppose we are cultivating wheat. So this wheat usually takes nitrogen from the soil. This means the next crop which we are going to cultivate must be a crop which usually add nitrogen to the soil. So there will be a next legume crop, that is, suppose this is the mustard crop, or simply some another crop, another legume crop, gram, or another legume crop, that is the pea. Okay, so in the next season we will cultivate this type of crop which usually add nitrogen to the soil. This means a method in which some farmers usually change their cropping pattern so that the nutrient which is taken by one crop must be supplied to the soil in the next season, so that there will be a net equilibrium can be maintained all over the land, so that there will be no depletion of what nutrients takes place. So it is a type of method in which, so writing the definition, as we know that the requirement of each crop is different. As we have discussed, the wheat is taking lots of nitrogen and gram is supplying lots of nitrogen. So it is taking some another things. For example, gram is taking sulfur. So the requirement of each and every plant is different. So each crop uses some nutrients more and some nutrients less in amount. Okay, farmers therefore change their change their crop in each season so that the soil is not depleted by any particular nutrient. This is called crop rotation. Okay, so here the definition which we are going to discuss, that as we know that the requirements of each and every crop is different. Suppose we are discussing, suppose this is the mustard plant. Okay, suppose it requires a large amount phosphorus, it requires, so it is required in large amount, but the amount of sulfur which is taken by mustard is very small. So as we know that the crop requirements may be different. Suppose the phosphorus is required by mustard in large amount, sulfur in the small amount. So each crop basically taking some amount of nutrients from the soil, some in the larger amount, some in the smaller amount. So farmers usually going to change their crops. Suppose in this season, suppose this is the month of June or July, so here paddy is grown, paddy is cultivated. So in the next season, when the next season will arrive in the after 3 or 4 months ago, then there will be a, suppose paddy is grown, so paddy is taking lots of water, lots of nitrogen. So in the next season we are going to cultivate either gram, either beans, either there will be the mustard, so that they can supply nitrogen to the soil. So in this manner crops are going to be changed. So crop rotation, it is a type of method in which a crop is going to be rotated one after another. So farmers therefore change their crop in each season so that the soil is not depleted by any particular nutrient. This is called crop rotation. Suppose in the next season, in month of October or November, we again going to cultivate what? Paddy. Then ultimately once again lots of nitrogen will be taken from the soil, and in again another season we are going to cultivate paddy. So what is going to be happen, that there will be a depletion of nitrogen all over our land. This means there is scarcity of nitrogen in our land. So ultimately the productivity will fall. So in order to avoid this condition, farmers apply this crop rotation where they are going to change their crop one after another, so that there will be no depletion of particular nutrients takes place. So this pattern is known as the what? Crop rotation. So how crops are chosen? How crops are chosen for the crop rotation? Okay, so first of all we have to discuss about the, suppose whenever we are going to cultivate two things, suppose I am going to cultivate mustard as well as the wheat in the same land. This means the basic environmental condition they require, for example rain, water, temperature must be same. So the environmental condition must be same for that crop. So first we have to discuss about the environmental condition. This means they must require the same environmental condition. And the second, we have to notice that the nutrient required by crops. This means suppose in the one season nitrogen is taken up from the soil, then in another season nitrogen will be added to the soil. So in this pattern there will be no scarcity of water. This means यहाँ आप ले रहे हो, this means nitrogen is taking and then again nitrogen is given back to the soil. So there will be no scarcity of nitrogen in this crop rotation pattern. Note it down. This means whenever you are going to cultivate or you are going to identify about the crop rotation, then you have to discuss that the environmental condition which is required by the crops must be of different. Suppose the environmental condition that is required for the paddy, one thing which we have discussed, that paddy requires lots of water, and in another season we are going to discuss mustard. We are going to cultivate mustard, that is the legume crop. It requires less amount of water, so requirement is also different, and nutrient requirement of the crop is also different. One is taking nitrogen, another is supplying nitrogen to the soil. So in this way crop rotations, crops are chosen. Okay, now suppose we are cultivating wheat and rice. Wheat and rice usually takes lot of nitrogen from the soil. So suppose in a particular season we are cultivating wheat and rice, then we know that these two crops usually take nitrogen, lots of nitrogen from the soil. Then suppose this is the first season. Okay, now in the next season, next cropping season, we have to cultivate any legume crop, for example mustard, for example groundnut, for example pea. So in the next season you have to cultivate any legume crop, because the legume crop usually what they are going to do, so they usually supply nitrogen to the soil. Okay, so in the one season nitrogen is taken, and in another season, so what is going to be happen, the amount of nitrogen taken is ultimately supplied by the next season. So in this pattern, this cropping pattern is basically applied in order to replenish the type of nutrients which is depleted. Okay, so here and here the cropping pattern is different. This means crop rotation is taking place. We are rotating the crops so that suppose one nutrient is taken, it must be supplied into the next season, so that there will be an equilibrium or net balance between the nutrients requirement as well as the nutrient supply. Ultimately, if you are going to discuss about a single crop, you are cultivating a single crop for a long duration of time, it may causes what? Depletion of a particular nutrients. So this is the cropping rotation or the crop rotation, in which one is taking, another is supplying. Suppose what is going to be, whenever you are going to in the next classes or in the higher classes, you will discuss about a bacteria that is called as the rhizobium bacteria, present in root nodules of legume plant, and they usually fix atmospheric nitrogen to the soil. So this is the most important point, that sometimes question may be asked that which bacteria usually fix nitrogen into the soil in case of legume crop. So one of the bacteria is rhizobium. There are so many other bacteria from Frankia, so many things, but you have to remember about a single bacteria, that is the rhizobium bacteria. So this is a crop rotation in which generally we are going to rotate the crops one after another season, so that there will be no depletion of of nutrients takes place into the soil. So this is all about crop rotation. Now what are the advantages of this crop rotation? So advantages of this crop rotation, the first advantage is that suppose whenever there will be no depletion of particular nutrient is taking place in this crop rotation, so soil fertility is already maintained. So the first thing is that soil fertility is maintained. Okay, the next thing, this means whenever any particular nutrients, for example phosphorus or for example potassium, is depleted in your land, then in that case we usually apply fertilizers. As we have discussed that fertilizers are rich in NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Then if this pattern is you are applying this pattern in your field, is there any chance of scarcity of any particular nutrients? So there will be no scarcity or depletion of nutrient will take place whenever we are applying what crop rotation technique. So the second thing, use of fertilizer is less because there will be no scarcity, so there will be no or less use of fertilizers. So second, that is there will be less use of fertilizers. And the third, that whenever there will be no scarcity of what any nutrients, then there will be the high yield, high productivity will be taken. So note down, these are the advantages of crop rotation. Now let us discuss the next cropping pattern, that is what? So you have to discuss one thing. Sometime a question may be asked that what the rhizobium is basically going to do. So as I have told you that rhizobium fix atmospheric nitrogen, so they usually change this atmospheric nitrogen into some special form, that is nitrate or in ammonia form. So note it down, the rhizobium usually fix this nitrogen into a special form into the soil. Either it will be in the form of nitrate, either it will be in the form of ammonia. Okay, so note it down. Now we are going to discuss the next cropping pattern, that is the mixed cropping. Okay, so you have to discuss about the next cropping pattern, that is the mixed cropping. Now let us discuss, suppose we are having lots of marker. Okay, so these markers, ultimately whenever you will ask, sir, what are the different markers that I am having? When I put one by one, then this is the black marker, this is also black marker, this is also black marker, this is the green marker, and this is the red marker. So whenever I will mix all these marker, then it is a type of mixing, and this mixing basically contains three things: either black marker, either green marker, as well as red marker. So whenever the question will ask about the mixed cropping, then you have to also have a clear concept in your mind that this is a type of cropping pattern in which two different crops are mixed. Suppose there will be a wheat, there will be a mustard. These two seeds are usually mixed and sown over the land. Okay, so whenever the two or more crops are grown simultaneously together on a same area of land or same field, then it is known as mixed cropping. So note down. Sometimes two or more crops are grown simultaneously together. This means both the crops are grown together in the same field, called as mixed cropping. So whenever two or more crops are grown simultaneously in the same land and in the same period of time, then it is called as the mixed cropping. Then what are the examples of mixed cropping? Then there will be wheat and mustard. As we have already discussed that wheat is a cereal crop, mustard is a legume crop, and one is taking nitrogen, another is supplying nitrogen. There is an equilibrium. Okay, so wheat and mustard, both these, when during the winter season, have you ever seen the land? Then there is the two crops, the mustard as well as the wheat. Both are cultivated in a single farm or a single crop land. Okay, so whenever two or more crops are sown in a particular field in a particular season, then this is known as what? Mixed cropping. As we know that the question arises in your minds that why these two? So the basic requirements that is required by what? Mustard, and what is required by wheat. The basic requirement, for example, both require same amount of temperature, both require same amount of water. So the conditions that are required by both the crops are usually similar. That's why they are sown together. If they require different things, so they can't be grown together. Their basic requirements are basically same. That's why they are mixed together, sown together. Okay, so wheat and mustard. Then sometimes wheat and gram, chana. Sometimes there will be groundnut and sunflower. Sometimes there will be cotton and groundnut can also be sown. So these are the examples of mixed cropping. Now the next question arises that how crops are chosen. That we have discussed in the previous crop also. So here also we are going to discuss how crops are chosen. So as I have already discussed that both the crops, either suppose it is a wheat or a mustard, the basic environmental condition must be similar. So the first thing, they should require similar environmental condition like rain, temperature, so they should require similar environmental condition like rain, temperature, humidity, etc. So this is the first point that you have to keep in your mind, that the crops which are usually selected must have the similar environmental condition. For example, they require equal amount of rain, the temperature, this means the temperature requirement of both gram and wheat is low, because these two crops are usually sown during the winter season. So the environmental condition are basically similar in both the condition. Now the second thing which we are going to discuss, that they should require different nutrients. As I have already discussed that nitrogen is usually taken by the wheat, and nitrogen is supplied by the mustard. So the nutrient requirement is basically different, so that all the nutrients can be supplied or can be taken or can be used by the crops in a proper manner. Okay, so should require different nutrients, so that all nutrients of soil can be used. This means if the requirement of both the crops, either wheat or gram, will be same, then the same amount of or the same nutrient is going to depleted. But the requirements in these crops must be different. Suppose wheat is taking nitrogen, legume is supplying nitrogen. So the basic requirements of both the crops is different, so that all the nutrients can be easily taken up by the crops. So on this basis, crops are chosen in the mixed cropping. Note it down. Okay, so what are advantages of mixed cropping? Advantages of mixed cropping, as we have discussed, on a same land. Suppose this is a land of 1 hectare, and we have cultivated two crops, or it is a mixed type of cropping. We have cultivated wheat as well as mustard here. Okay, so this is a type of mixed cropping. Suppose of one crop, that is the mustard, is not grown, so the another crop will be there and it is grown. In that condition, whenever you are cultivating two crops at the same time, if one crop fails, then another crop is there, so that your product, there will be no such effects can be seen on the wheat, because the pest which usually takes nutrients or harm the mustard is different, and the pest which usually harm the wheat is different. So whenever in your land the pest arrives and they usually destroy the mustard, then you are having the another crop, that is the wheat crop, so that the productivity can be somehow maintained. So if one crop fails, another is there, वहां पे वो क्या कर सकती है, सर्वाइव कर सकती है. So low risk, if one crop fails, other may still survive. Okay, so note it down that whenever any crop is failed, there is the another crop that will survive in that condition. So this is the advantages of mixed cropping. Note it down. Now we are going to discuss about the next or the last cropping pattern, that is the intercropping, and it is the advanced method of mixed cropping. Why I am saying intercropping is an advanced method of mixed cropping? Because it is somehow related to the mixed cropping, in that also two or more crops are cultivated, but in the mixed cropping we usually mix the seed and sow the seeds. Okay, so all over the land there will be some mustard, there will be some wheat, mustard wheat is in that pattern. But whenever you are cultivating any crop in a different rows, suppose in the row first we have grown only one crop, that is soya bean. Then in the row number second we have cultivated what? Maize. Then another in the row third, soya bean. Then in another row we have cultivated row number 4, that is maize. This means whenever you are cultivating two or more crops on the same field but in a definite row, one row of another crop, another row of another crop, then this type of cropping is known as intercropping. So note down intercropping. Okay, it is an advanced form of, suppose it is also a mixture of two or more crops, so it is also advanced form of mixed cropping. It is the advanced form of mixed cropping. Two or more crops are grown on same field but in a definite pattern. Okay, few rows of one, few rows of one crop and few rows of another crop. As I have discussed, in the row number first there will be the soybean, in the row number second there will be the maize, in the row number second there is another soybean, and in the row number fourth, that is once upon the maize. So intercropping is basically advanced form of mixed cropping. So the basic difference between mixed cropping and in intercropping is that there will be no definite proportion. So the two or more crops are mixed and ultimately spread, we are going to spread the seeds all over the land. There is no cropping pattern. But whenever you are discussing about the intercropping, then one particular crop is sown in a particular row, another crop is sown into another particular row. So that this is the basic difference. So it is known as the intercropping. This means it is an advanced form of mixed cropping where two or more crops are grown on the same field, but in a definite pattern. First, suppose few rows of one crop, so few rows of soybean, few rows of another crop, that is the few rows of the maize. So this type of cropping is called as the mixed cropping. So let us discuss the examples that we are going to discuss in the intercropping. So there are basically 2 or 3 examples. The first, that is soybean plus maize. So soybean plus maize, it is in one row, it is in the next row. Okay, so that is a type of intercropping. Second, that we are going to discuss, that is the finger millet. Finger millet is somehow known as the bajra plus cowpea. Cowpea simply means lobia beans. It is also known as lobia. Okay, so these two are the examples of intercropping, soybean plus maize. So it is placed in one row, in the next row there will be the maize. In the same manner, finger millet in one row. Suppose this is the row of finger millet, then in the another row there will be the cowpea. So this is a type of pattern that is known as the intercropping. Note it down. Then we are discussing that how the crops are chosen. So here also we have to discuss. So now let us discuss the how crops are chosen in case of intercropping. So how crops are chosen. Then you have to discuss, the first point is also similar here, that whenever you are taking two crops or you are cultivating two crops on the same field, then you have to discuss that the basic requirements, for example temperature, for example rain that is required for the growth must be same. So first, it should require similar environmental condition such as rain, water, etc. रेन हो गया, रेन न्यूट्रिएंट्स, rain, humidity, temperature, etc. So the basic requirements must be same and should, as we know that one is taking another nutrient, another is taking another nutrients, so the nutrient requirement must be different so that all the nutrients can be utilized by the plants or the crops. So should require different nutrients so that all nutrients of soil are used. This means if all the nutrients are used in a proper manner, so there will be the no chances of depletion of a particular nutrients in that. Now, what is the advantages? Okay, advantages of intercropping. What are the advantages? So as we know that there are two crops in two rows, crop number 1, crop number 2, okay, in the row first, in the row second. So there is the probability of two crops. Suppose one crop fails, then there will be the chances of another crop still survive. So first thing, the advantages is that there will be low risk if one crops failed, other survive. Then the second one, suppose any particular disease that is related to the soya bean, suppose a particular disease is spread all over the soya bean, so the soya bean got damaged. Suppose this is a condition in which locust, there will be the locust attack that is taking place all over the soya bean, and the whole soya bean is getting damaged. But these locusts do not harm the second crop. So if the organism that are damaging this soybean is different, and the organism that feed on the second, that is the maize, is different, so there will be a chances that the disease which is spread in one row cannot spread to the another row. As we know that, so the basic requirements or the requirements, as well as we can simply say that the different microbes can spread over the different crops. So the second thing that you have to note that disease cannot spread from one row to another row. This is because as we said that the types of pollinating agent that are basically help in pollination of soybean is different, and the types of pollinating agent that usually applied for the maize pollination is different. So as we know that there will be a different crops, a different organism that will survive or that will eat the soybean, and there will be the different organism that will basically eat the maize. So there will be the basic requirements, or simply we can say that the microorganisms or the disease which are spread by a particular pathogen is different. Okay, so that particular pathogen usually harm a particular crop. So in that manner, whenever a particular pathogen that is spread all over the soybean, so all the soybean is going to be damaged, but that pathogen will not attack on the maize, so the whole maize is safe, and it will survive for the next season. So all these are about the various type of cropping patterns. If you like this video, kindly hit like and subscribe button. Thank you all.